This is Red Dog Terrain. Welcome back to the shed. Today we're building a Tuskarr hut. So I'm continuing with my Tuskarr Village series. This is part 2. In a previous video I made the entrance, the little gate, and this one I'm going to make the medium-sized covered hut, and then hopefully eventually I'll make the big one later on. So I'm continuing to use this circular wreath foam that I got years ago, and I use it for the gate that I built for the Tuskarr Village. This stuff is very dense. It does take cutting well, and you can shape it well, but it's very porous, and you kind of gotta do things with it to make it usable and not make it look like, old cheap foam, hard foam like that. So I took the wreath and I cut it down into the shapes I needed. I also took a few pieces of regular XPS, the insulation foam, because I wanted to change the shape. I wanted it to be a little bit longer, just to match the source material. While I cut up this foam, I'm going to ask you to check out my friends at the Plastic Microphone Studio. It's a collection of Louisiana creators like Average Home Theater Reviews and Faye 5 from Fans and Sequel House, just working together to promote each other. Check them out. Link in the descriptions. A lot of this build was shaping and sanding and cutting the little buildings that are in the Tuskarr Village in Warcraft. They've got these massive whale bones or megalosaurus bones. I'm not really sure what they are, but that's the majority of this building, and that's the structure that they have everything built upon, is these Tuskarr bones. It took me a while to figure out how I was going to build a hut underneath, and while scrounging around on the floor, I found this little plastic egg, and I realized it was just about the right size, and eventually I'd cut it in half and build the hut on top of it. In Warcraft, the Tuskarrs have got these symbols, and I drew them on there and painted them on there, and then at some point I put them upside down. I think when I went to cut it to make them a little bit taller, I flipped them upside down, so I messed up. The Dremel made easy work out of carving out this stuff, and it's hard to see here, but once it's painted and once I put a brown wash on it really pops and it stands out. When it came time to Mod Podge this, I actually did 2, maybe 3 layers of this just to try and fill in some of those porous gaps that the foam has, especially like the parts where you cut it or you sand it. It really stands out, so I tried to really fill in those gaps with the Mod Podge, and for the most part there's still some of the little gaps and tiny little holes, but it also kind of adds to it. Plus it still it matches the first piece, the gate that I built like a year ago. So I painted them up in a tan color, a beige. I did a brown wash and a few spots a black wash. There's gaps in the tusk, which look pretty bad at first, but eventually they'll get covered up with a real simple idea that I had, and that's actually something that matches what's in the game, so it worked out even better for that. I moved back to the hut. I took that egg and I just scored a piece of cheap dollar store foam board, cut it out, and then would glue it in after I cut the front off of it to make the entrance. While building the hut, I really wasn't sure if it was going to work, and eventually at some point I just kind of went, I'm just going to go with it, and if it doesn't work, I can always just throw it in the trash and start over. I can come up with something new, and I stopped worrying about if it was going to be perfect and everything was going to line up. I also knew that you could cover up a lot of mistakes with the snow later on. This cloth that I'm using to make the canvas actually comes from an old Halloween decoration that I made. that eventually fell apart and had to be put away and discarded this year. When I glued everything on, I used super glue. I don't know if it was the best because it made these real dark spots with a white ring around it. You can see them clearly here. So I made a wash, but for whatever reason I was wondering how well I could make a wash out of ink and water, and I don't think it worked great, but it worked okay. And in my head I was like, oh, this is a hide from some animal that has spots like a cow, and that's how I justified how bad it looks. And you can see here that despite my best efforts, it turns out okay. I think the dry brush really pulls everything together, and it tones down all the dark spots of this creature that I've made up in my head. The only thing that I really wish would have worked out better would be the opening. Once it all kind of dried and the washes were there, the flap wasn't as obvious. I think I probably could have put some more glue on there and had the bottom of the flap coming open, well, like the wind had caught it and it was just flapping in the wind and staying slightly open. After I got the hut done and the tusk and all that, I moved to the base of it, cut out a simple shape, something that would fit this, put everything on, and then I filed down the edges to make it not so obvious. Kind of beveled the edges, that's what I meant to say. And while I'm doing this simple kind of ground texture stuff, and before I get to the snow, I want to thank the band Aya for their use of their music in all of my videos. Check them out on Bandcamp. They came out with a new live album a couple months ago, and I've been enjoying that one. And if you've made it this far and you haven't left me yet, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe and tell a friend and leave a comment. I've had people say that they didn't know what to comment, so this time tell me what your favorite bird is. And mine is the shoebill stork. That's my favorite bird. Elder Atuic tightened the straps on his whisker braids. He pulled up his belt and slipped his feet into his boots. He clipped his pouches on and straightened his loincloth. He pulled on his thick leather... Honey, where am I? Oh, never mind, I found them. He pulled on his thick leather gloves. After taking one last sip of his hot coffee, he stepped out into the frigid weather. The wind blew and immediately dampened his clothes and his face. He was always amazed at how much protection his hut gave him. Another Tuskarr passed and waved. Elder Atuic waved back. He took a deep breath and said to himself, well, no time like the present, and began making his rounds. You see, I covered up the joints where the different pieces of foam met with just simple twine, and that's how it looks in the game, so it worked out well. I spent a lot of time trying to get this to fit right. It seemed like every time that I went to put it together, it was the wrong way or the shape, or I couldn't get these to line up exactly how I wanted it. And eventually I just kind of gave up on having it look and be perfect, and that's okay, because that's okay. I made a batch of snow, which is equal parts baking soda and Mod Podge, a little bit of paint, a splash of water. And with that, we're done. My Tuskarr hut's finished. I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Thanks for leaving a comment. I'm going to be quiet as the music plays and we go to the glamour shots. Thanks for watching, guys.